Vanakkam Dohadeva and everyone. Wonderful to be with you. I will start by sharing the screen. There we go. And we are looking at December 4th, which is our date in Singapore. Our first topic, keeping the mind clear. Subtitle, by resolving negative happenings promptly, we free ourselves to flow with life's rhythms and accept all things as they are. So this isn't actually an answer to a question, but it's a concept that has come up in a few of the emails in people's lives. So I thought it would be good to share. Generally what's going on in one life is going on in other lives as well. It's the nature of astrology. Many of us go through the same type of events at the same time. Recently, so this is recently versus 2007 when it was written, I had the opportunity to attend a gathering of the Council of Hindu Temples of North America in Clinton, Michigan. During the evening ceremony, the resident Acharya at Arsha Vidyagurukulam in Pennsylvania, Swami Pratyag Bodhananda, received an award on behalf of Swami Dayananda Saraswati. In his acceptance speech, Swamiji offered a charming explanation of Aum Sivaya. Oh, that's a nice photo of him. Pratyabodhanandaji. Om is to invoke, Shivaya means to God Shiva, and Namaha means to surrender. You should all chant Om Namah Shivaya for 1 minute at 8 a.m., 12 noon, 4 p.m., and 8 p.m. That was the sadhana he gave to everyone, very unusual. And of course, the way he defined it, Om Namah Shivaya, usually doesn't use the word surrender for Nama. We would generally say it means to prostrate, to praise, worship, revere, but Swamiji said to surrender. He went on to explain that all our frustrations in life, our stress and unhappiness come from not surrendering, not accepting what is as it is. If we can accept what is, we can surrender to God Shiva, then we won't have that stress. We won't have that unhappiness. All we have to do is surrender. When he said that, I immediately thought of Gurudeva's explanation of surrendering to God Shiva, which is found in Dancing with Shiva. Gurudeva uses the dance analogy that all of life is the dance of Shiva. Life is Shiva in motion. It is his dance, and we can either flow with the dance or we can resist. If we are able to dance with Shiva and not resist or fight against it, then everything goes well for us. Said another way, dancing with Shiva is the ability, the philosophical ability to accept what is as what should be. The challenge, of course, is that there are so many problems in the world that we wish weren't there. But when we surrender to God Shiva, we can clearly see that all things that are occurring are an expression of what was set in motion previously. It's all working itself out. We can't stop that which was set in motion from expressing itself. We can only direct it. We can channel it, but we can't totally eliminate it unless the whole world is doing tapas. But that's not very realistic. We can influence it for the better, but it will still continue to work itself out as the past expresses itself in the present through the unfailing cosmic law of karma. Swami had a succinct way of stating this insight. What was Swami's statement? In English, there is not one wrong thing. In Tamil, oru polapum illai. Being able to accept the world as it is, accept our life as it is the practice of surrendering to or dancing with Shiva. So my simple way of stating all these ideas is we just look at everything as the next thing to do without thinking about we wish it wasn't happening, without refusing to accept it, and definitely without labeling it a big problem. Because if you label something a big problem, it's harder to deal with. But if it's just the next thing to do, somehow it's easier to work with. Some next things are easy and some are difficult. Fortunately, everything isn't difficult. Okay, here's a good question. What is fatalism and why do we disagree with it? The attitude of fatalism is, if everything is as it should be, why should I even try? It won't do any good anyway. In truth, we can make strategic changes in our own life through the decisions we make. We affect our future not only in this life, but in lives yet to be lived, by what we do in the present. In the wider world beyond our personal sphere, our ability to change things is limited and delayed by time. It is hard, for instance, to bring peace to the world by our individual actions. Even here, we should not become discouraged. All our actions taken together can and do make a difference in the course of time. But it's a slow process, multiple lifetime process. One of the beauties of Gurudeva's teachings is that they are both conceptual and pragmatic, containing the tools, the things to do to control the forces of mind and emotion and manifest spiritual ideals in our life. Negative attachment to the past is one of the main obstacles to surrendering to God Shiva because it congests the subconscious mind and thus makes a person reactive, preoccupied, and prone to instinctive emotions such as impatience, frustration, anger, resentment, and despair. In such states, it is impossible to maintain an attitude of surrender and acceptance. Far too many things in our life are wrong to sustain the consciousness that Shiva's world is perfectly all right. So, of course, we know the major tool that Gurudeva gave us is Vasana Daha Tantra for this type of need, writing down memories of the past that are emotional and negative and burning them up. Writing them down brings them out of the subconscious mind, and burning them up dispels the emotion and gives us a sense that they are gone. So for the big ones, it may take more than one time. Quite often, memories of the past are what bog down our spiritual life. Imagine you have a basement in a house. These days, it's usually the garage. And you just keep putting things there with the promise that one day you will clean them out and organize everything. Often that day never comes. Life is so busy that you just keep storing more things away. Eventually the basement is so full and congested that you can't find anything. And it is troublesome to even go there. Our mind is like that. Life is so fast-paced that day after day after day, we put experiences that are still bothering us into our subconscious without resolving them. This creates a growing burden. And that's one reason many people change drastically over time. What they're storing away that's unresolved keeps increasing. So they were the happiest person they were when they were 6 years old, and now that they're 60, they got a lot of complaints. Why? Because they haven't resolved things as they went. Subconscious is containing all kinds of things that are in disorder. But the mind has a wonderful mechanism to tell us when something is unresolved. This is important. Do you know what it is? Memory. We remember the experience on a regular basis. We may remember it several times a day. That means it is unresolved. The subconscious mind is displaying it unsolicited on our mental screen, letting us know it needs attention. If we ignore it for a time, say a week or two, the subconscious mind finally gives up reminding us. It says, you don't seem to want to resolve the matter, so I will store it away. It dutifully puts it in the subconscious basement or the subconscious garage. So next point is important. To avoid building up a subconscious of unresolved memories, it is obvious what we need to do. We need to act on each experience while it is still alive in our mind before we forget it. Though depending on the intensity of the experience determines how long we remember it. Something not very intense, maybe a few days. Something that's intense, maybe a couple of months. But in both cases, the mind protects us. It says, okay, gave you a chance to resolve it and you didn't, now I'm going to hide it from you. So it gets suppressed, swept under the carpet, stored in the basement. What are some of the ways we can resolve an experience? Sometimes just thinking about it is enough when the problem is simply that we haven't taken time to reflect deeply enough to fully understand it. Most such memories involve conflicts or misunderstandings with people. Through reflection, we can come to see the other person's point of view. This broadens our understanding and makes us feel better about the experience. So reflection, by yourself. You can reflect and sort it out, see what went wrong, and find a way of feeling good about it. For serious disagreements that we can't come to terms with alone, we may need to talk with the person. Sometimes to smooth things out, we need to offer an apology. And if that's not appropriate because of the nature of the relationship, we can offer a gift. And then we get to Vasana Daha Tantra. We can also write down the problem and burn it up. If we do this mental maintenance on a regular basis, we avoid filling up the subconscious with unresolved negative experiences. Why is this important? Because divinity is on the other side of that barrier of emotion. Our soul nature can be obstructed by a congested subconscious. When we look inward in meditation, we are trying to see our soul nature, trying to see our divinity, our superconscious. If the subconscious mind has a lot of unresolved matters in it, all we see is the subconscious mind. That's not much fun. So we don't look within very often. We keep distracting ourselves. Let's go out to a movie. What's on TV tonight? Because what's inside of us isn't that enjoyable. Oh, this is a good point. And it's why some people stop meditating, is their meditation technique does not involve clearing out the subconscious. So they're going inside themselves, getting stuck in the subconscious mind. They can't get through it. It has too many unresolved issues in it. So that's no fun. So that's why in Gurudeva's teachings we don't focus heavily on meditation, and for a few years we've had time to work on the yamas and niyamas, which keeps us from putting new unresolved things in the subconscious, and then we work on resolving the ones that were there previously, clear them out. So then we're in pretty good subconscious shape before we seriously pursue meditation, the yogapada. But if we keep the subconscious uncongested, it is transparent, and when we look within, we can see right through it and perceive our divinity. Those who want to live in and enjoy their inner self, their spiritual nature, need to keep the subconscious mind clear. Keep it from piling up with unresolved negative experiences. In this way, seekers avoid clinging to the past and are better able to surrender to God Shiva and accept the present as it is, while at the same time working to create a positive future. Gurudeva sums it up beautifully in Dancing with Shiva. The world is seen as it truly is, sacred, when we behold Shiva's cosmic dance. Everything in the universe, all that we see, hear, and imagine is movement. Galaxies soar in movement. Atoms swirl in movement. All movement is Shiva's dance. When we fight this movement and think it should be other than it is, we are reluctantly dancing with Shiva. We are stubbornly resisting, holding ourselves apart, criticizing the natural processes and movements around us. And the last slide, it is by understanding the eternal truths that we bring all areas of our mind into the knowledge of how to accept what is and not wish it to be otherwise. Once this happens, we begin to consciously dance with Shiva, to move with the sacred flow that surrounds us, to accept praise and blame, joy and sorrow, prosperity and adversity, and equanimity, the fruit of understanding. We are then gracefully in unrestrained surrender, dancing with Shiva. Second topic. Questions sent in to satsang@hindu.org. We can use some new questions. I think we've answered them all. I wonder if you could kindly elaborate on the societal global benefit of individuals striving to attain self-realization. From our teachings, it's needed to achieve moksha for the individual, but also feel that each person that achieves this consciousness may also be helping to bring about the dawn of the Satyuga and raise the vibration of the planet. So how would you answer this question? So before we do, we want to define the word Sannidhyam, the radiance and blessed presence of Shakti within and around a temple or a holy person. So in Gurudeva's writings, sometimes he calls this darshan, darshan of the deity, Satguru's darshan, the Shakti. The most common term in philosophy is Sannidhyam. So to answer the question, a couple of approaches. Saivite Shastras, those of you who don't know what the Saivite Shastras are, why isn't it on our website? It's just for monks. And sometimes we pull out appropriate quotes from it to share with those who aren't monks. But it's like a manual for the monastery. So it's like an employee manual. Lots of it isn't that interesting. Each monastic was treated as an individual soul, and a sense of sameness pervaded throughout all of the Saivite monasteries. There was a great feeling of there is nothing happening here. The Sannidhyam was strong and fulfilled its purpose. Families began to send their sons to the monastery well-trained, as well as assume their position in training young men of other families. Their daughters were kept virgins until marriage, as were their sons, and a new Saivite culture began to bloom surrounding each monastery. As the Sannidhyam more and more fulfilled its purpose. Now, what's the purpose? Of stabilizing the intensity of Saivism in the minds of the families and surrounding community. So, monks gathered together in a monastery, striving for self-realization, generate a certain Sannidhyam that stabilizes. Even other religions, such as Buddhism, began to flourish in the Sannidhyam radiations from the Saivite monasteries. So we have a few Buddhist temples on the island. Yep. According to this, are benefiting from our existence. We used to have one of their deities in the side shrine, and Gaudava waiting, I think, for decades for them to build a temple for it. Finally they did, and he moved out. We called him Nada Buddhake, which is a corruption of the proper pronunciation, but interesting deity. So, second answer is from Living with Shiva, lesson 330. Monks of every Hindu order are guided and guarded by unseen beings who look after their lives as if they were their own. Families are blessed who share in and support the renunciation of their sons born through them to perform a greater dharma than the grahastha life could ever offer. And gets to the same point. It is the monastic communities worldwide of all religions that sustain sanity on this planet. It is the monks living up to their vows who sustain the vibration of law and order in the communities and nations of the world. This is how the Devonic world sees each monastic community worldwide. This is how it is and should always be. Yes, Gurudeva. This is how humanity balances out its experiential karmas and avoids destroying itself as it passes through the darkness of the Kali Yuga. That's good. We don't want to destroy ourselves. The monastic communities that surround the planet, fulfilling their dharma, compensate for the adharma that is so prevalent, thus ensuring that humanity does not self-destruct in these trying times. We must, for the sake of clarity, state here that monastic communities are either strictly male or strictly female. Co-ed mixed group ashrams are not monastic communities, but classed traditionally as communes. So that's two responses to that question. What is the Hindu perspective on lab-grown meat? Then the question has more. A lab-grown meat startup gets the FDA's stamp of approval, is the headline. The U.S. regulatory body has signed off on Upside Foods cultivated meat, but the company is still figuring out how to make enough of it to sell. Then the person who asked the question says, Namaste, a Hindu perspective on this would be awesome. From a purely ahimsa perspective, this may actually be more benign given the well-known tendency of the agricultural industry to poison the earth and abuse its workforce. From a health perspective, it perhaps comes with the usual cautions, but again is perhaps organic. And many of the usual concerns may be limited. ? So we're going to approach answering this in a two-step process. First, we're going to look at the 3 standard reasons for not eating meat. And that's our question to you. What are the 3 standard reasons for not eating meat? One of them is obvious. The other 2 you may not remember. But it's good to look at them as part of answering this question about lab-grown meat. First one, More and more individuals are switching from the meat-eating diet of their parents to a vegetarian diet as a matter of conscience based upon their personal realization of the suffering that animals undergo when they are fettered and slaughtered. This is, of course, also the Hindu rationale for a vegetarian diet. It's based on the virtue of ahimsa, refraining from injuring physically, mentally, or emotionally anyone or any living creature. The Hindu who wishes to strictly follow the path of non-injury naturally adopts a vegetarian diet. A common saying that conveys this principle to even the smallest child is, "I won't eat anything that has eyes unless it's a potato." So clearly, this rationale does not apply to lab-grown meat. There's no harm involved. Second rationale for vegetarianism has to do with our state of consciousness. When we eat meat, fish, fowl, and eggs, we absorb the vibrations of these instinctive creatures into our nerve system. This chemically alters our consciousness and amplifies our own instinctive nature, which is the part of us prone to fear, anger, jealousy, confusion, resentment, and the like. Therefore, being vegetarian is a great help in attaining and maintaining a spiritual state of consciousness. And some individuals take up vegetarianism for this reason alone. So this reason still applies to lab-grown meat, and we'll look at it more in a minute. Meat, whether it's from an animal or whether it's lab-grown, still affects our consciousness in a seriously negative way. A third rationale for vegetarianism is that it uses the planet's natural resources in a much wiser way. In large measure, the escalating loss of species, destruction of ancient rainforests to great pasture lands for livestock, loss of topsoil, and the consequent increase of water impurities and air pollution have all been traced to the single fact of meat in the human diet. No one decision that we can make as individuals or as a race can have such a dramatic effect on the improvement of our planetary ecology as the decision to not eat meat. Many seeking to save the planet for future generations have become vegetarians for this reason. So this also does not apply to lab-grown meat. So only one answer out of three, one reason out of three not to eat meat from animals applies to lab-grown meat. Our second part of answering it is looking at the nature of foods, drawn from chapter 11 of Living with Shiva. And the question for you is, what are the three categories of food? Sanskrit words. We are all familiar with the phrase, "we are what we eat." The Hindu viewpoint on this is that the different types of food we consume have a significant influence on our state of mind and emotions. So it's not just meat that affects our state of consciousness. All food affects our state of consciousness in a positive, well, I don't want to say positive, negative way. It affects our state of consciousness in different ways, because there's three different ways. For example, eating meat, which is known to be a tamasic food, opens the door to lower consciousness and makes it harder to stay out of the states of fear, anger, jealousy, and remorseful emotions that follow. I jokingly say, if an angry person wants to become angrier, eat meat. Guaranteed. So if you're trying to control anger, eating meat is making it harder. And the next type of food, consuming too many spicy foods and stimulants or rajasic foods can overexcite our physical and intellectual activity. So if someone has an intellect that they just can't turn off, reducing rajasic foods can be helpful. On the other hand, pure or sattvic foods, such as fresh fruits and vegetables that grow above the ground, foster our intuitive or soul nature. Nice picture. For maximum spiritual progress, it is best to eat plenty of sattvic foods, to be moderate in the intake of rajasic foods, and to avoid tamasic foods. So some spiritual disciplines also avoid rajasic. For example, no garlic and onions. But Gurudeva says moderation, that in our approach, we look at food such as garlic and onions as healthy, and if you don't take too much of it. Chandogya Upanishad. When the food is pure, mind becomes pure. When the mind becomes pure, memory becomes firm. And when a man is in possession of a firm memory, all the bonds which tie him down to the world are loosened. And then we get Gurudeva's statement. Each day that we live, we are striving for the middle path, the balanced life, the existence which finds its strength beyond joy and sorrow, beyond pleasure and pain, beyond light and darkness. But in order to arrive at this state of contemplative awareness, we must begin at the beginning. And this week our study is diet, physical, mental, and emotional foods. So a comment there, I think this is a wonderful part of Gurudeva's teachings, is he starts at the beginning. We were talking about that in the context of meditation earlier, that many meditation teachers don't give you the tools to clear your subconscious before they put you into serious meditation. So you just end up in your subconscious. So we begin at the beginning, diet, physical, mental, and emotional foods. So we're not looking at mental and emotional parts of this quote. According to the ancient science of Ayurveda, nature is a primordial force of life composed in three modes, qualities or principles, manifestation called gunas, meaning strands or qualities. Three gunas are sattva, beingness, rajas, dynamism, and tamas, darkness. Sattva is tranquil energy, rajas is active energy, and tamas is energy that is inert. The nature of sattva is quiescence, rarefied, translucent, pervasive. The nature of rajas is movement, action, emotion. The nature of tamas is inertia, darkness, contraction, resistance, and dissolution. The tamasic tendency is descending, odic, and instinctive. The rajasic tendency is expanding, actinotic, intellectual. The sattvic tendency is ascending, actinic, superconscious. The three gunas are not separate entities, but varied dimensions or frequencies for the single essential life force. The food we eat has one or more of these qualities of energy and affects our mind, body, and emotions accordingly. Hence, what we eat is important. Sattvic food is especially good for a contemplative life. Tamasic foods include heavy meats and foods that are spoiled, treated, processed, or refined to the point where the natural values are no longer present. Tamasic foods make the mind dull. They tend to build up the basic odic energies of the body and the instinctive subconscious mind. Tamasic foods also imbue the astral body with heavy odic forces. Rajasic foods include hot or spicy foods, spices, and stimulants. These increase the odic heat of the physical and astral bodies and stimulate physical and mental activity. Sattvic foods include whole grains and legumes and fresh fruits and vegetables that grow above the ground. These foods help refine the astral and physical bodies, allowing the actinic superconscious flow to permeate and invigorate the entire being. People who are unfolding on the yoga path manifest the sattvic nature. Their path is one of peace and serenity. The rajasic nature is restless and manifests itself in physical and intellectual activities. It is predominant in the spirit of nationalism, sports and business, competition, law enforcement and armed forces, and other forms of aggressive activity. Tamasic nature is dull, fearful, and heavy. It is the instinctive mind in its negative state leads to laziness, habitual living, physical and mental inertia. As it is by cultivating the rajasic nature that tamas is overcome, so it is by evolving into the pure sattvic nature that the continual ramification of rajas is transcended. That is the problem with rajas. The intellect can continually ramify, never turns off. It is important to maintain a balance of our several natures, but to attain toward the expression of the rajasic and sattvic natures in as great a degree as possible. As you examine the menu closely, you will find that you may allow your inner guidance to tell you what is most appropriate to eat. The desire body of the conscious mind may want one type of food, but the inner body of the superconscious may realize another is better for you. It's up to you to make the decision that will allow a creative balance in your diet. This awakens the inner willpower, that strength from within that gives the capacity for discrimination. So, since that was so long, I'm giving a summary to get back to the question, lab-grown meat. So in summary, lab-grown meat does not harm the environment and no animal is slaughtered to produce it, meaning there's no it's ahimsa. However, it is still tamasic and affects our consciousness in a negative way, increasing the tendency to be lazy and increasing the likelihood of getting seriously angry. Therefore, for those on the spiritual path, it should be avoided for that reason. Lowers our state of consciousness. Third topic is, as usual, character building. We have persuasiveness, which is the 43rd character quality of our character building workbook. And we start with the question, how would you define persuasiveness? Persuasiveness is the ability to effectively communicate the merits of one's ideas. I cultivate it by presenting my ideas diplomatically to the right people in the right way and at the right time. The opposite is unpersuasiveness. Gurudeva, I say that if you have really made the religious teachings a part of your life, you will naturally be able to convince your family and friends of those wonderful truths. If you can't convince your family of the teachings, that shows that they are just intellectual thoughts that in practice don't mean anything to you. Good point. Those who say, well, nobody understands me, I feel all alone on the path, are going through a period in which they have memorized everything but understand very little, and therefore cannot explain or convince their fellow man of these great truths, due to the fact that their subconscious basement is still full. We talked about that a few times before tonight. So we got to empty out the subconscious of reactive memories. It's the ones that are reactive. We have to take the emotion out of them. The memory will still be there, but it's the emotion that disallows us from passing awareness through it into the superconscious. Comparing the actions of one who is persuasive to one who is unpersuasive. When writing to a college seeking entrance, you, persuasiveness, carefully craft the application, speaking to the issues you know are important to the faculty of that college. Customize it. Unpersuasiveness, compose a letter that will be generic enough to send to every school you think you might apply to. Second situation, in your valedictorian speech, you, persuasiveness, powerfully direct the graduating class toward their future. Unpersuasiveness. Tell a few jokes and call it good. Third and last situation is to when to present new ideas, persuasiveness. Carefully choose a time that works well for all involved. Unpersuasiveness. Remain clueless about the time constraints and moods of your audience. Good point. Reflection. Take a moment to identify a few ways in which you could improve in persuasiveness. And the assignment. These 2 weeks, whenever you need to convince another of your plan, be sure you start by understanding his ideas and objections. Oh, that's the end of our presentation. Oh.